In a world where information flows rapidly and public trust in electoral processes is crucial, the media plays a vital role in shaping electoral reforms by covering election processes, reporting irregularities, and holding electoral bodies accountable. The media serves as a watchdog for democracy through investigative journalism. It informs the public, highlights instances of electoral malpractices, and keeps important discussions about reforms in the spotlight. Both traditional and digital media significantly impact how we perceive elections and their integrity. Their influence on transparency and public understanding is essential for fostering an informed electorate. The media shares conversations around electoral integrity, voter education, and the need for reform, acting as a powerful tool for democratic governance. However, the media faces numerous challenges in its role, from security concerns, logistical challenges, misinformation, and political pressure. We will explore some of the issues around the role of the media in electoral processes and what it means for the future of democracy in Nigeria. I am Ezenwa Wagu. Welcome to Electoral Reform Half Hour on NTA News24 Abuja. This program is brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa with support from MacArthur Foundation. Joining us for today's conversation is Mr. Imoni Amarere. Amarere is a distinguished journalist and media executive with over 3 decades of experience in Nigerian broadcast journalism. He has held prominent roles in the broadcast industry, including Director of News at the African Independent Television, AIT, where he has been instrumental in shaping news coverage and current affairs programming. Amarere is widely recognized presenting People's Power and Politics, a current affairs program on AIT that examines the interplay of politics, power, and the people, engaging national leaders and policymakers in critical discussions on governance, democracy, and social development. It's my huge pleasure to welcome you to the program. The hunter is being hunted today. How does it feel being on this side?
Well, it's one of those things that as a journalist you must prepare for. It's my pleasure being here.
So, a part of this introduction didn't quite present your leg. How much leg you have in civil society? You are in the board. You sit on the board of several civil society organizations. And indeed, I know that you've been very deeply involved in some of the work that we do over a period of time. How can we leverage this your experience, not just your experience, the media, to enhance voter education, particularly in explaining complex electoral laws? We've been traveling around the country as peering advocacy and holding town hall meetings. One of the most significant thing that we found out is that there's absolutely no understanding of the governing regimes, around electoral processes. How can we leverage the media in getting this understanding?
Comrade, you have said so much in your prologue. You have broken down what exactly the role of the media should be and is expected to be. But like you have also said, not much has been achieved in that regard. We have not been able, I'm talking about the media, been able to break down some of these processes, as complex as they may be, but we can do better by breaking them down for the understanding of the ordinary people. It appears that the media has just been talking above the heads of Nigerians. Most of our people, the greater number of the populace in Nigeria, are people who are either uneducated or uninformed about the processes of governance at every level. Most of our people live in the rural areas. Most of our people do not speak English as you and I do right now. And so we need to communicate with them. we need to break down these processes by bringing them to their own level. The languages they speak, the different dialects, and even more so, the pidgin English that is almost like a lingua franca in Nigeria today. We need to bring it down to that level, and then we'll be able to inform them, educate them, and in that same process we'll be able to help them form their opinions and make valid decisions about electoral processes.
Just hold it up there. I think first it's Marx said the educator must himself
be educated.
Right. What I'm talking about is that we having this in geopolitical zones, town hall meetings, and there's a side media training, and we have the most, distinguished segment of the media participating in these media trainings, and some of them OAPs, and simple issues in the law governing some of the things they report is shocking. There are places where we went to and we said, how many people, we have about 40 people in the hall, and we say, how many of you have the Electoral Act? And you see 2 people raise their hand, and then you say, how many people have digital or even... So my challenge is not just the people, we will get to that, but the educators themselves. How much are we investing in ensuring that election is not just an all-commerce conversation?
I must tell you, and unfortunately so, that those who are supposed to educate the people themselves, that is the journalists, like you have said, are themselves not properly informed about what they want to educate the people about. And this is a very big problem for the journalism profession in Nigeria today. I used to say that most of those who practice journalism today are people who do not really have the passion for the profession, but they are in it because there's nothing else to do or no other profession to easily get into. So you have journalist entrepreneurs who are just in there because of what they can easily get or make out of the profession, not because they have a passion for it. We have conducted a number of trainings over the years, and you'll be amazed at the level of ignorance, and I mean ignorance, displayed by journalists on issues, not just political issues, not just electoral issues, even common everyday issues. They are just not really interested in bringing themselves up to speed with developments around themselves, around their societies, around their communities, or indeed around the world. It's a major problem, and that problem can only be solved by training and more training. There are people who come for trainings and who just do so because they have been asked to come and train you, or because of whatever allowances they are likely to get from such trainings, not because they are going to go away with the knowledge shared at that training in order for them to do their jobs better. So it's a major problem, and I think the Nigerian Guild of Editors is doing something in this regard, is working very hard. I can speak of the Nigerian Guild of Editors because I know that it's an elite body of journalists, and they are doing a lot of training. They are getting a lot of assistance and perhaps support from international organizations to carry out these trainings, particularly for editors, because if at that level you are able to train editors, then you can do train the trainers.
You can cascade
it down the line and all of that, and I'm hoping that it works.
Excellent. I actually was going to, I've seen the challenge of training, but there are other challenges that journalists face, especially in reporting election. What are those challenges, and how do you think we can create safe, environment for them to do their job?
The major challenges that journalists face in the coverage of elections are, one, security. There's a big security risk in the coverage of elections in Nigeria. Everywhere you go in Nigeria, at least as of today, there's a major security risk. People are intimidated, they are harassed, they are either by the politicians themselves or by their political talks and whatever, and if by a vested interest. You go cover an election in a community and they already made up, the political godfathers or stakeholders in that place already made up their minds of what they want to do and how it should go. And if you are coming there as an objective reporter, you are obviously intruding into their privacy in quote now.
Yes.
And anything can happen to you. Another major challenge that journalists face in Nigeria, particularly so the electronic media professionals, is the challenge of finance and tools. And in fact, in the case of finance, it's not just those of us who are in the electronic media, even those who are in the newspapers, the print, and even social media. The challenge of enough infrastructure, tools to work with. You can imagine covering elections in 774 local governments in Nigeria. If you are to be present in all those local governments, for instance,
196,000.
or 109 senatorial districts, if you want to limit yourself to covering each local government, where will you get the manpower from? The adequate manpower, the well-prepared manpower, and where will you get the resources, the finances to deploy them to all these places? Is a lot of money, a lot of resources. A TV house, for instance, cannot just send a reporter on the field without a camera. So, and that means that you need a camera, you need a cameraman, as the case may be, in order for you to properly and intensely report what you are being sent there to do. Where will all of that come from? So it's a major problem, the tools. And then the logistics. You need to move people around. Where do you get all the money and all the resources, the vehicles to move your crews around to these places and report objectively and effectively?
So the logistical challenges that affect even the EMB itself affects those who want to report.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sometimes I really wonder what then, how is social media intervening in this, and the challenge of disinformation, misinformation that has pervaded that how are you balancing the traditional and the social media influence in shaping voter perceptions?
The advent of social media is a major challenge to the traditional media. And this is so because what has happened over time, over the years, since Nigeria's return to democracy, is the fact that the social media has been used by politicians, by vested interests, and by so-called stakeholders to, as it were, misinform, disinform, and spread fake news. Is a major problem in the media today. Because what you see is that before elections, politicians set up social media handles, and then they get these people who are not trained journalists. Most of them are not trained journalists. Most of them.
All they need is a cell phone.
All they need is a cell phone
and data.
And then they do go out there and report whatever they want to report.
We are talking with
spread fake news.
We are talking with Imoni Amare, a veteran journalist. I don't want to call you veteran yet.
Not yet.
You are still working. We'll go on a break now. Electoral Reform Half Hour continues shortly. Please stay with us. Welcome back. and thank you for staying with us. It's still speaking with Mr. Imoni Amarere, distinguished journalist and media executive. I can't have you on this platform, and I wouldn't want to. The value of experience that you bring to bear will have to shift away from your forte, which is the media. One of the big challenges that we continue to have is the electoral justice system. Ensuring that election disputes are resolved swiftly and fairly, especially in line with Justice Way's report. You know, how can the media promote accountability? By reporting court procedures impartially during post-election litigations.
I have a very short answer to that. Luckily for me, I have been, in the past 1 year and a half, I've been working with a technical working group that was set up by Action Aid Nigeria with support from Ford Foundation and other international organizations. We call it Citizens-Led Engagement on Judicial Accountability in Post-Election Justice Delivery in Nigeria, the CLIP project. And that technical working group has come up with a number of suggestions as to how we can actually deal with post-election justice system. One of which is that all election litigations should end before the swearing in of the winners of such elections. And I think this has been on the table for a very long time. But of course, the laws as they are today makes it almost impossible for that to happen. You have 180 days of litigation, and the time between the end of the election and when people take power is not as long as that.
Yes.
So one of the suggestions that the technical working group is putting forward is to say, look, let's reduce that 180 days to say maybe 120 days. By at least 60 days. And that way we can ensure that election litigations are concluded before swearing in. And one way of doing that is also by reducing the levels at which these litigations go on. Because at the moment, you move from the election tribunal to the appeals tribunal and then up to the Supreme Court. In most of the cases, up to the Supreme Court. Whether it's presidency, governorship, or even senatorial, you go up to the Supreme Court. Why not reduce that? Why not make it, say, 2 levels for the governors and the senators, that's National Assembly members? Why not from the tribunal and let it end at the Court of Appeal? And for the presidency, from the Court of Appeal, which is the Court of First Instance, the Tribunal of First Instance, as it is now, end at the Supreme Court. And cut off one of such levels so that the time is shortened. And this
are you taking into cognizance the internal party issues? That because when you say election litigation, many people just stay around the conduct of elections. But what we've seen is that nearly 50% of the cases that surround the election are sometimes has to do with the behavior or indeed the misbehavior
of politicians and their political parties. Why the point is, why should such internal party disputes linger until the elections and after the elections?
Because our electoral process insists that you have to go the whole hog. So that beats into the point that you are making.
Exactly.
About
shortening the process. And then one thing that the media can do to help in ensuring that electoral litigations are open and independent is, what I suggest is, let's have live transmission of all such electoral judicial disputes. And let's also have live recording of such litigations, of such trials. That way, nobody will go into the courtroom, come out and report something that is different from what happened.
I wanted to ask you if the Cliff Project has something to do with the anatomy of losing elections in Nigeria. Because sometimes people are not prepared for elections and they get to court and they are doing all kinds of drama.
There a large number of people who approach the tribunals do so because they are pressured into doing it by their, either by their political parties or by their political associates. Even when they know from the world, there are a number of frivolous petitions that are filed. They waste time and the resources of the state in hearing these petitions.
I'm aware you've been around covering elections for quite a long time, and one big elephant in the room right now is collation.
That's right.
And then the like I keep saying, the challenge is that I met some journalists and they say, oh, INEC deceived us. They told us that results will be uploaded to IREV real time. And I asked the question, what is IREV?
IREV is not a collation facility.
So how do we get to that point where we are able to transit from a viewing center to electronic collation? What do you think, with the vast experience that you have both locally and internationally, how can we leverage some of these best practices to see what we can do?
What is usually said is that most rigging of elections take place at collation centers. Even after they have come in from the polling centers, at the collation centers, anything can happen. So, if that is the case, why do you
think that is the case from your many years of experience?
A number of things happen at collation centers. Figures can and are manipulated at collation centers. But to avoid that kind of situation, what I would suggest is as simple as this. Let us have an electoral law that guarantees electronic transmission of results at the collation centers or from the collation centers, rather than the manual collation that happens now. Let us have electronic collation of results. That way we can minimize. It will not completely eliminate, but it can minimize incidents of manipulation of figures as is being alleged at the moment. I think that is one thing. And perhaps gradually we can also move to the whole issue of electronic voting. It's a very complex, it's not as simple as people think it is. We live in a third world, in a developing society where we are still battling with basic issues of electricity, power, and the whole rest of it, the logistics, movement of materials and human beings to voting centers and all of that. You see it every election, late arrival of materials, late arrival of election officials and all of that. So it's a gradual process. It's not as simple as people think it is, because I see people talk about it glibly. Oh, let us do electronic voting. Where is the infrastructure for that to take place now?
So we're having a conversation around the challenges of political party management, election management, results management. Where is the place of independent candidates in this?
At the moment, the Nigerian Constitution does not recognize.
Yes, but we are pushing for reforms. Do you think it's something that we should?
It is something that we should.
Who would they be accountable to?
Who are independent candidates accountable to in other climes where they exist? They are accountable to their constituents. They will be accountable to their constituents, because that way we will short circuit this whole question of political godfathers who decide that it is Comrade Eze that is going to run this time, or it is XYZ that the cap fits.
Imoni Amarere, we're going to have to bring you back to this program. The time is so short. This is where we draw the curtain on the episode of Electoral Reform Half Hour. And we wish to specially thank my brother and friend, Imoni Amarere, for the time and contributions on this program. It was a great pleasure having you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much.
Electoral Reform Hour is brought to you by the Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa with support from MacArthur Foundation. As usual, we know we are live every Saturday, 8:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. with a repeat broadcast every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. on same station. You can contact us on our social media handles showing on your TV screen. Thank you for watching. I am Eze Mwawagu.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
my pleasure.
Thank you.